Okay. Cool. Well, today we have a very special guest and someone who's been a huge mentor and impact in my life. We have Jonathan here, CEO of Advertise Purple. For those of you who aren't familiar with Advertise Purple, one of the biggest affiliate marketing agencies I know, works with thousands of brands on, traditional affiliate marketing with like Capital One rewards, Rakuten rewards, other Amazon solutions, but then also has one of the biggest TikTok shop books of businesses that I've ever worked with. And so Advertise Purple was on Inc. 5000 fastest growing companies multiple years in a row, has scaled to about 100 plus employees. But Jonathan here was employee number 4, right-hand man of founder, chairman Kyle McNitt. And now he's sort of leading the charge as CEO at Advertise Purple. So for those of you who haven't listened to any previous content we've done together, Jonathan and I have, talked a lot about affiliate marketing, where things are headed, what trends are in the space, why we're pivoting into social commerce. But one thing that really stuck out for me that made me want to bring him on again was the transition through multiple levels of an organization at multiple stages, right? For those of you who aren't familiar with, Reacher and where we're at, we're growing, right? We just raised our first round. We've 3x'd our headcount of domestic employees in about a month and a half. And there's different levels and stages of business that we're going through that, Jonathan really has been through. So today in this episode, really want to dive deep into, your background and your experiences going through Advertise Purple in these different stages of life, right? So one, would love to kind of understand, see if I missed anything in the intro for Advertise Purple. And then for listeners who haven't heard about you and what you do, maybe a quick background on yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Sohan. I think you did it justice. I mean, we definitely have been in the traditional affiliate world now for since really 2012, really blew up in 2016, and the social commerce, as the TikTok shop world is new to us. In the last really 6 months, where it was knocking on our door and it was inevitable, and there's a lot of continuity between what we were doing before in the traditional direct-to-consumer side and TikTok shop. So excited to dive into it. And yeah, I think you hit all the main points in my background. So I did start as employee number 4, but I was at an outsourced CFO company. I didn't really know what I wanted to do at the time. I liked numbers and had finance. I came on as employee number 4 as I think my title was like business manager, which really didn't mean anything. I was like doing HR, I was doing payroll, I was doing the financials. I had no, I was just trying to add value wherever I could. I really reached the next level one day when Kyle, the founder, was like, "Hey, there's this client call I really don't want to take. Can you take it for me?" And I'm like, "I'm gonna be honest, I don't even really know what the company does, but yeah, and that's a microcosm for what my personality was at the time and why I think I added value to a small and really growing company at the time. Is I said yes to everything. It didn't matter whether it was cleaning the bathrooms or jumping on a call with a high value client at the time. Now I've had some promotions. I stayed on the finance side for a while, then moved to operations. I was CFO, then I was CFO and COO, and then Kyle stepped down about a couple years ago, so I became CEO.
Yeah. So let's get through every stage of that, right? So you joined from the outsource CFO company, right? Like, what were you thinking about when you joined Advertise Purple? Like, I know you said you were doing everything from ops, payroll, some finance stuff as well, admin stuff. Like, what did a day in the life look like at that stage?
Yeah, it was different every day. Really, and that's we had about 10 clients. I'm talking about the outsourced CFO company, and Kyle was just one of those 10 clients. The Advertise Purple was just one of those 10 clients. And all of a sudden, Kyle and I had more and more conversations, and he was asking my opinion on more things. And we just, everything, our mentality, our work ethic, everything just vibed, with the two of us, that he just saw value. I was getting my MBA at USC at the time and said, "Hey, I'm probably going to leave where I'm at." And he said, "I am not losing you." Tell me what we need to do to make that happen. And, pretty much the next day I was full-time at Advertise Purple, and, asking what did I do on a daily basis. Again, it evolved over time. It started really on I was doing financials and on the back end. Then it turned into like client relations and turned into, hey, I had a knack for being able to talk to tough clients, to be able to calm clients down, kind of conflict mitigation, and no one, it was a very young company, you know, most of the other employees, and not that I was very seasoned at the time, but most of the other employees were fresh out of college, that they didn't know how to deal with conflict. They didn't know how to deal with tough clients. And being in the service industry is, as you know, a little bit at this point, that's what it comes down to. You have to, there's a lot of fires. There's a lot of things that can happen, whether it's, you know, AWS breaking and
I remember that
and nothing working, you know, on your platform, or it's, you know, a pixel breaking on the back end of a site and the client blaming you, or it's sales being down 80% for one reason or another. Being able to talk through that, articulate the reasons why that's happening, and come up with a plan on how to mitigate that is really powerful, and something I learned, you know, early on in my days at Advertise Purple.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because those are all skills that I feel like USC might not directly teach you out of a textbook, right? So I guess, you know, looking at evaluating risk and choosing your career, you know, being in USC, being at this outsourced CFO company, I know you and Kyle really got along on like I guess like personality, character, values level. There was good rapport, but like, was there anything specific about the opportunity that you had that made you deviate from the path that you've been investing in and putting all your hours into education in, or?
Yeah, you know, it's funny, the USC thing, I talk about, I'm one of probably the only people in my cohort that did not move jobs. You know, everyone tries to go to the Big Four, go consulting, and to pay $200,000 to stay at the same job for a couple years was not something that a lot of people can stomach. And I always joke like, well, I didn't get any value out of it, you know, out of USC. But you know, exactly, you hit the nail on the head. The value came from doing presentations and comfortability and learning about different industries and hearing just like knowledge and being around people that were really smart and really cared and challenging you and having productive conversations. That's where the value came. And some people that I still talk to and hang out today, USC just does a great job at that. Like, you can only learn so much out of a textbook. It is not worth $200,000 to learn. But it was out of, you know, teachers and professors pushing you and you. I spoke, one of my first presentations was in front of the CEO of Trader Joe's that I had to talk about a business, you know, do a case study on, just like crazy things like that you cannot put a price on that type of experience and that type of, you know, throwing your foot in the fire and saying, hey, figure this out, because that's what business is figuring it out and taking a leap of faith. To your question on how, you know, kind of like pivoting and how, you know, I had jobs that I was struggling to find something that I really find a job that I really found value in, that was my comfort zone in terms of that I wanted, that I was motivated for. I think, you know, affiliate marketing, am I interested in it? Yeah, it's okay. You know, it's you know, I joke, but it's all like, it's interesting. Marketing in general is interesting, and affiliate marketing has been all that I've thought about for the last, you know, 10, 15 years at this point. But did I, you know, seek out affiliate marketing? No, but I sought out a company and a founder that I really wanted to work hard for, that I found a culture that, you know, was trickled down, that was supportive and had an open door policy. And you could come with the idea of a crazy idea and maybe it would be shot down, maybe it would be implemented. But the fact that, you know, the creative juices were flowing and everyone had a say, especially early on, that was really rewarding for me.
Interesting. Yeah, because I feel like I was in a similar situation to you in college. So I studied corporate finance and accounting, right? So, but here I am selling software for TikTok Shop, right? Like, I didn't learn any of this in college at all. And when I was evaluating roles out of college, what I was told was it's a combination between your compensation, the team / leadership you're working with, and then the scope of the role, right? And I think a lot of what we're told, you know, coming out of college and that structure is like build a proper foundation, get a nice seal on it, right? Go into something known, stack up your success over time, right? And so what I'm hearing is that the compensation, right, might not have been the same coming out the gate going to a startup, but like the team, you know, at Advertise Purple, like Kyle, like made a huge difference in the decision, right? But then like the scope, you know, you do say over and over again, like the value here versus the value there, like what does that value look like? Like in terms of like how you're coming out and evaluating this, is there a specific value system? Are there like characteristics in which you're assigning value to the scope of doing multiple things at Advertise Purple that appealed more to building a compounding skill set and getting your CFA later on?
Yeah, I don't think, equating like specific value to specific tasks. I didn't care about that. I cared about, was what I was doing having a purpose, meaningful? Would it potentially help the company and in turn help my coworkers and in turn help, Kyle at the time? Yeah, I would think so. And I tried to allocate my time towards things that I thought would, be client first and help our clients and then help. So I don't think, there wasn't necessarily like, certain things that I thought added more value than other. I just kind of went with the flow and said yes to everything. And until I think that's more, it took me, probably a couple years to be able to assess what really added value. And prior to then, it's probably my own fault. I said yes to everything, no matter what it was. And, that led me to making some good decisions, making some bad ones. Sure. But until I found my footing and was able to, direct people under me to do some of those things that I, may or may not add value, I was just doing a lot of them myself.
Yeah. And it's very interesting in the whole like saying yes and no to things. Like you said, you dove straight into client escalations and client relationships. That's very different than the personality type of someone who does accounting and finance, just what I would infer, right? Like, and you said it was a natural fit going into it. Can you walk me through like your first experience when you were handling your client escalation that one day when Kyle was like, yo, take this call, I don't want to deal with it?
Yeah, I was scared out of my mind. Yeah, it's, everyone had always told me that I had a knack for sales or that I should be in sales. Mm-hmm. And one of my first jobs out of college was selling insurance. And It was in New York at the time. Insurance company, the island, Long Island where I was, had just been hit by, I think, Hurricane Sandy or one of the hurricanes. And they were having me call businesses that were impacted by Hurricane Sandy and trying to get them to buy insurance. Wow. People were, I think I might have told you this story before. People were like crying, and I was like, hey, so do you want to buy life insurance? It was so disingenuous. And what I found is that keeping clients is selling. Talking to clients and selling yourself and selling your business is selling. I now believe in Advertise Purple. I believe in what I'm selling. That was where I had a natural knack for it, is not, selling something, selling insurance, or I couldn't go door to door and sell solar or sell, I really do believe in the service that we provide and that we're adding value. That's where I think my, outgoing personality has lended itself to.
No, that makes sense because, I don't know if I told you, but I sold pest control door to door. That was my first business job, sophomore year summer, went around Indiana, almost got shot. But, the sales playbook they have is pristine. Like it's like 110 pages. It's almost like culty in the way they know what you're going to say and queuing up the body language. You're stepping to the door, you're backing away, then you're hitting them with the second close after the third no, and it works. And then you sign someone for a yearly contract to get rid of ants that come 2 months of the year, and you're just like, whoa, how did I do this? And for me, like, I've actually never had formal sales training. I've never gone to a single Sandler sales training or had someone teach me how to sell. Like that door-to-door experience sort of got me on the right direction. So that sort of makes sense in how your background's lining up. And then I do want to go back to those early days, right? Like, what does it look like doing different tasks every week? And like, if you're one of those 4 core founding employees, how do you find success with such an ambiguous scope? And I imagine Kyle couldn't be there to direct you through every single task, write out a Loom video and assign it to you in Asana, right?
Yeah. I was figuring out a lot by myself and failing a lot. There was a lot of, again, like it's probably to a fault, that yes mentality that I had. Sure. I made wrong decisions. I jumped on way too many calls. I jumped on a call that we were billing $0 to that, was a total waste. And, Kyle was really a mentor to me that helped me through some of those things and helped me decide what to prioritize and what not to. But yeah, early on it was, you don't know, I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know what really was adding value. I didn't know what to prioritize. So it was, I was looking for small wins. I still look for small wins. Yeah. I think that's a massive, you need to, otherwise you get sucked in and, we've talked about before, trials and tribulations and highs and lows. It's really important to not ride those highs and lows. And I've talked about that with you from day one. It's exhausting. You think you sign on a client and it's the best day of your life. They could leave the next day due to things out of your control. And, that's a really tough thing to swallow at times. So, I think just, again, I was looking for small wins. I was thinking we obviously had KPIs that, macro KPIs of the company, client retention, AOV, those types of things that I was trying to, I think a way to look at it is at the end of the day, I tried to think about the client first and think about everything I was doing was for the benefit of the client. If it increased AOV, if it increased LTV, I was doing the right thing. And I tried to think about my decisions as it related to, one of those things. And LTV, lifetime value of client. Yep. So retention or AOV, how much we were billing them or how much revenue they were driving.
Prioritize your highest billing clients that are likely to stay, right?
Exactly.
Good rule of thumb. I think it's interesting in the early stages of like 1 to 4 employees. I mean, my assumption is you guys probably hadn't found the strongest product market fit, right? So what was happening this week was also indicative of like a pivot, right? So what was like some of the advice, Kyle was giving you, or how did you ground yourself when the North Stars you anchored yourself to sort of just fell on a consistent basis and you guys were just kind of swimming in water trying to figure out if you did have product market fit or not?
Yeah. It wasn't easy. Like I said, I remember we had like this scathing review. Our only review at the time on any review site was, I don't even know the company, some that basically just ripped us apart. Yeah. And, that was brought up in sales calls all the time. That was brought up. And wait, you guys don't have any brand awareness and you guys haven't won. Who are you? So, product market fit, we were still really figuring it out. And Kyle brought on 2 really good salespeople at the time that were able, once we were able to show and had a foolproof system on growing, we knew what affiliates to add, we knew how to how to drive revenue and traffic for our clients and how to add value. Affiliate marketing obviously was growing like crazy at the time. That helped us. But once we really found and had some of those wins, we just emulated that. We used data, we replicated what was working. We learned from what wasn't working. We learned where to invest funds. We always relied on data. Even before we built the technology, we said, okay, let's run pivot tables and let's if we have to do it by hand or Excel at the time, we did it.
Yeah, interesting. And so before I dive into that next point, right, how does someone go about navigating a sales call when their only awareness is one scathing review?
Yeah, not easily. Yeah, it was leaning on the things that we knew worked. It was leaning on the wins. It was, at times in the beginning, we would take a loss. We would come on at performance only. We didn't have long-term contracts. We still don't, but that's something we said, hey, we believe in earning your business month over month. If you want to cancel with us, cancel. That is very unique in the marketing world. A lot of times there's 12-month contracts because a lot of times companies take a loss. You're investing a lot, especially in the beginning, to get things up to speed when you're not necessarily showing a positive ROI yet. If a client puts a notice in the first 30 days or terminates in the first, you're losing money. And we were willing to take those risks.
Interesting.
We had a very low barrier to entry. We have a low starting price point, especially in our world. We build mostly on a performance model. So as our clients grew, they said, hey, we know we're going to get, 6x ROAS. We don't care if you're billing us, $1 or $10,000 a month because we can back into that. And that's what's great now about the TikTok shop world, about still the affiliate world and what we do. And that's even, in like COVID times and some of the crazy e-commerce boom, the people were not as willing to invest in channels that they didn't know whether they were going to be successful. So affiliate plus our model, I think, lended itself really well to, hey, there's a minimal risk here. We're only really billing you a nice number on both sides if we're showing value and growing your revenue.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Like, I don't know if you've read Hormozzi's book, $100 Million Offers, right? So like he talks about this where it's like, if you're in a very tight situation with a prospect, the prospect's like too cold, you just de-risk your offer, which is essentially what I'm hearing you guys do. Is like, hey, like, we'll bill month to month on performance. You lose nothing if you work with us, and we only gain if you gain. So why not test it out, right?
Nothing to lose, exactly.
It's nothing to lose. Even if someone has that scathing review, you're de-risking that second negative review someone could leave by not billing them that much up front.
Yeah,
right?
100%. Yeah, and luckily now we don't have, more good reviews than bad.
Yes.
But that was something very early on. Again, like being client focused is that I would reach out and ask for reviews. And, I think we have like a 4.8 on Trustpilot now and
Amazing.
200-ish reviews. And part of the reason why is I would ask for feedback if clients didn't have good if they didn't have good feedback or didn't want to write a review. And if they did, I said, great, that would do us. We're in a service-based industry, and to the credit of people should do their research when they're looking for a company to work with. And reviews are now massive and are massive, especially they don't know what they're signing up for. And yeah, we take some of the risk away by trying to shorten, contracts and having a little barrier to entry, but it's still, for an owner operator that is trying to decide between hiring an employee or paying Advertise Purple, I want them to be able to make an informed decision.
So like what should people be thinking about if they're looking at going with an agency versus hiring in-house? Because this is kind of like the old tale, right? Where it's like if I hire in-house, they might be able to deeply integrate with the brand and have more context into our other verticals that touch our core offering. And therefore they have a certain, level of insight that leads to an incremental better decision-making process. But then the cost of taking them on, the taxes, payroll, maybe we'll go with an agency, right? Or maybe I don't even know anything about the place I'm getting into, so I'd hire someone bad because I don't even know how to vet them, right? Like these are the things I'm thinking about if I'm going to bring someone in-house or go to an agency, right? So
yeah, I mean, I'm always, obviously I work at an agency, so I'm biased, but I'm always of the mindset that you should only invest internally in your core offering and what is going to make you, if you are building widgets, outsource marketing, outsource payroll, outsource everything you can that isn't, manufacturing, isn't logistics, and the reason being is that one, we're experts in what we do. We are probably cheaper than hiring an internal person, not even factoring in payroll costs and being in California and all the craziness that comes with that. But when you think about, we have global context. We've had over 5,000 brands. We know what your competitors are doing. We know what brands that did well, what brands didn't do well. You bring on, a college graduate that you're asking to run your affiliate program, they're going to go on ChatGPT and say, hey, what affiliate should I add? They don't have the relationships. They don't have, there's just so much that comes down to it that it sounds on paper, sounds like, oh, I'll just hire someone internally to do everything. There's so many factors that I would advise against when it comes to that.
Well, what about those customers who are sort of a bit jaded about agencies, where they're thrown to a junior account manager to a big agency, but they're paying premium agency rates for that junior account manager? Yeah,
it's unfortunate because that happens a lot. I think that it has put a stink on and a stigma on just agencies in general. And I think we have a lot of business that we don't, new business that doesn't come to us because they've been burned by past agencies or burned by, someone on Upwork that said they were an expert or someone, we've all heard the stories. So, I think, again, do your diligence, read reviews. We talk to potential, talk to current clients, talk to your team, ask to speak to, hey, who would my account manager be? Ask to speak to, I will jump on personally as the CEO.
Yeah.
Any potential client that wants to jump on and has questions about our service, I'll answer them. You hear it from the horse's mouth, and I will be 100% honest because then I know you're going to come to me if something happens. So, I think that level of care and that level of personalization, that differentiates the, agencies or really any company that, is successful compared or going to care about their clients and be successful for their clients compared to the ones that aren't.
I mean, side note, do you think a director of social commerce is an essential role, or do you think people should really be looking at agencies to fill that gap until there's more, I guess, historical data to make that decision? Like, where do you think that hire sits at in the current landscape?
Yeah, that's a great question because that almost counteracts my global context because everyone's kind of learning on the fly. And, the affiliate marketing world is where we have most of our clients. Sure. That is proven, that's built out. We have data. The social commerce world, we're learning with a lot of brands and we're trying to figure it out and we're trying to pivot. Do I think that brands should hire internally? Or I feel less strongly in the social commerce world than I do about in the traditional D2C side.
Sure.
However, I will say there comes a strength of numbers, being a TikTok accredited agency and having relationships with TikTok. Yep. We all know how tough at times it can be.
Yeah.
Having relationships with creators and being able to talk to a creator to work with multiple brands and get discounts there, being able to get creators to actually respond to you compared to just reaching out, just by the Advertise Purple name or the Reacher name, you have a level of credibility immediately that if you're an up-and-coming brand and you're Joe's cat socks, who's gonna creator X, the likelihood that they respond. But if you're Advertise Purple and we're saying, hey, we just brought on this brand, hey, I know we've worked with you before, Vanessa, we have these 8 brands here, let me tell you all about them, let's jump on a call, I think you'd be a really good fit for these 4 or 5. I think there's an argument to be made that, again, do we have as much data and as much, is it as like programmatic as traditional affiliate? I'd be lying if I said yes, but is there enough power that comes from economies of scale of just us working with so many brands?
Sure.
And I think the answer is yes there.
Yeah, because the way I'm looking at it, if I'm a business owner, is it's a function of time, money, and expected value, right? Like you can look at it, the payroll costs of hiring a director versus the agency fees of Advertise Purple. But then it's just like, hey, can that director alone escalate to TSP as an official TSP partner? Like maybe they have a relationship, maybe they don't. Are you vetting that during the interview process? I don't think most people are.
Most people don't even know what questions to ask at this point because it's so new.
It's so hard. And then it's just like the expected value, right? And the cost of time. I think like, especially if a founder is investing their time in growing the TikTok shop vertical for their business, how much of their time do they want to invest figuring it out? Versus if I can pay the difference in $5,000 to an agency that has figured that out over 100 brands, right? And granted, everyone's still learning it. The incremental value between those two options is like, I'm going to pay to get the alpha on my learning from that agency, right? So that's a good point.
Yeah, 100%. And like I said before, going back to focusing on your core competencies, if you're going to run TikTok Shop, then are you going to do the payroll too? Or are you going to do, there's only so many things that a founder can do, especially running a small growing business, that outsource as much as you can, especially in the beginning. If it gets to a point where you feel like, hey, this agency has got us to a good place and we already have these 100 creators that are in a Discord and are are promoting the brand well, and we have this on, great, then you can bring it in-house and hire, or do it yourself or hire someone on a part-time basis. That's a totally reasonable change at that point. Doing it in the beginning and trying to build it up by yourself is going to be really hard.
Well, now this made me think of all kinds of different questions about building your own TikTok shop team, right? So I think I have a few agency CEO founders, who are my friends, and we're all talking about
other than me,
other than you. No. I tell them I'm friends with you, and I no other agency.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry. I'll block them right now. But everyone is sort of struggling to build their team, define their value proposition, right? I'd love to understand, for those agencies, CEOs, businesses who are just starting out and building their own agencies, what was the journey like of you building your own team? Like maybe let's start it straight from the decision of even taking on social commerce as a business line, right? Like what did that decision-making process look like? What did your level of risk tolerance or budget for this initiative look like when you were evaluating that against your other core verticals?
Yeah, and you're talking early days when with Advertise Purple, or early days with social commerce? With
Advertise Purple, starting your TikTok shop vertical.
Got it. Okay, so on the TikTok shop side, I look at affiliate, or I look at as really two different things. There's client relations and there is creator or affiliate relations.
Sure.
We have the client relations part figured out. We have our technology, we have a communication portal. We had all the infrastructure on that end figured out. We would just transfer over that, knowledge, that those similar structures from affiliate to the TikTok shop side. On the creator relations, that's when we relied on partners like you guys. That was when we looked at tools. We didn't know what we didn't know at that point, and we're still, like I said, we're still learning. I think having partners like you and having the wind at our back of social commerce has lended itself for us being really successful, and like you said, managing more TikTok shop brands than any other agency that I think that you say but we're still learning on the fly. We're still trying to decide what's going to bring a positive ROI, and whether that director of social commerce internally at an agency is the right move or not, and whether someone coming in, there's a lot of it's not as formulaic as Advertise Purple
Sure.
is, as our traditional offering is at this point. We know, okay, we bring on one more account manager, they're going to manage X amount of clients.
Sure.
Right now, I'm like, if we bring on one more person, that means we're going to bring on 15 more creators per brand, and I don't know what that really equates to. So there's a lot of failing fast and trying to learn from those failures. And we're still trying to figure that out. So I wouldn't say I have the perfect formula there. There's a lot of learnings and a lot of things to bring over from the traditional side, but we're still trying to figure it out, as every other agency is.
No agency has it figured out 100%. I think the partners who have all the data on the back end can see. I think like one thing that's I'm curious about is you mentioned like setting up a good partner network as the foundation to get your baseline knowledge on like how to do your delivery of your service, right? Are there any parallels between like how you're setting up your partner network for your social commerce line of service, like in comparison to your traditional affiliate, right? Because we talked about how you were setting up relationships with Rakuten Rewards, Levanta, Capital One Shopping, right? What did that, I guess, like relationship building process with those partners look like at that stage?
Yeah. So I think we're, again, emulating a lot of what we did back in the day. Rakuten Rewards was Ebates at the time, and no one really knew what Ebates was. And we...
what are Ebates?
So Ebates was... Rakuten bought Ebates.
Okay.
So Rakuten Rewards is... Ebates was Rakuten Rewards before... It was Ebates.com.
Okay.
The same exact... they'll probably kill me for saying it. But the same exact site. Cashback. Same idea. It was cashback. They were one of the first to do that cashback loyalty shopping experience with searchability and on-site. No one really... It was foreign to a lot of people. And eBay, they were growing like crazy at the time. We said they weren't charging an onboarding fee. We said, hey, we'll pay you. Like, let's figure out how we do this at scale together. We want to make us prioritize us compared to everyone else, get our clients on your site quicker. What's that gonna cost? How can we both add benefit? So why did we do that? It was for the benefit of our clients. We knew, again, we could calculate a positive ROI. It's the same thing on TikTok Shop now. We're figuring out what partners, hey, what can we do? Where can we invest that's gonna 1 + 1 is gonna equal 3, whether that's in AI tools, or that's in specific creators that we can pay, whether that's with there's just so many different avenues that you can go, that I think it's being willing to take a risk and potentially losing money at times to find what the right answers are. You can't be scared to do that.
It's interesting because, in this space, and, I'm from San Francisco, we went through Y Combinator. There's a very high diffusion of SaaS, software as a service companies who service, creator marketing services and brands, right? The diffusion of it is so high, right? So if you're the CEO of an established company like Advertise Purple, when it comes to even investing an hour of your time, I'd say conservative, that's like a $2,500 cost, right? Hour of your time. And then, sometimes you go down and have dinner with one of these guys, right? That comes at an opportunity cost of something critical to the business. With these like SaaS companies starting up, right? Some may fizzle out in a month. You might spend weeks building a relationship, right? Like, what do you think about when like picking a partner for your network that essentially is a foundational element of building your entire service line out?
Yeah, it's a great point. And like, going back to some trials and tribulations from the early days, you can't say yes to everyone.
Yeah.
There's an opportunity cost, and taking an hour meeting with a partner that isn't going to equate to anything. That's an hour away from the team. That's an hour away from adding value to clients. So I think there's just some inherent things that you learn from people and you learn from meetings. And I still go back to I'm always client first. I'm thinking, hey, can this conversation, can this go and help our clients? If the answer is yes, or there's a higher likelihood, if there's a 51% chance, then yeah. And, I know, speaking to you and I's relationship early on, you had a very similar mindset of, let's get creative. Let's figure out how to get, talk through this. I want to be around people that are really smart like you, that are able to challenge me and ask questions and get the creative juices flowing that I wouldn't normally. I'm still learning TikTok Shop. I'm still passing that down to the team. Mm-hmm. And I want to find partners that are ahead of the curve when it comes to that, whether that's in their technology, in their conversation, in their people, in any of the above. There's value in kind of any and all combination of those things.
So how that partnership provides you an edge, whether it's, with the people, the conversations. I mean, even in the product, right? I think, you've probably talked to more partners than me. I'm sure you've met some like really, really genius product founders who are so tech savvy and so technical, but the relationship's not there. And then you meet some people who are so charismatic, but the product doesn't exist. Yeah. You know what I mean? So like, is there a specific weighting you use? I know a lot of it comes down to like business acumen and experience, right? But like for those agency founders who are trying to establish their partner networks and foundations, like what advice would you give to them when evaluating the critical relationships in the ecosystem?
Yeah, that's a tough question because I probably trust people too quickly, and I like everyone. It's one of my faults. Like there's not it's business acumen. It really just comes with time and comes with, spending time on the wrong things to learn what to spend on the right things. But I would be lying to you if I didn't tell you I got tricked still to this day by people who are really charismatic, but their product sucks.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so let's say you set up that foundational relationship with like a few partners, like, what next? Like, what does the next step forward look like for a budding agency after that?
Yeah, I think it's challenging both sides. It's asking, how can we further the relationship? How can we get more clients on? How can we both make more money at the end of the day? And that can come in a number of different ways and number of, it can happen organically. It can happen just by having conversations. It's conversations like this, or conversations like, hey, let me tell you about what's happening with one of our clients. That is where it's going. The unexpected value is going to come, again, from speaking to people that are in the industry, that are talking to. You go to people go to conferences, and you go to these conferences that we aren't sending our team to, that I'm sure vice versa. You are asking me things on the traditional side, or creators. That is where people that have that mentality of let me learn and let me pass that knowledge to other people, that is where I try to spend my time, especially on a new and evolving platform like TikTok.
Interesting. You're sort of like the beholder and curator of knowledge and connections. Super connector. One thing I want to focus on, right? I don't know how deep you can go into this, but I believe the first person you hired for TikTok Shop was Caroline, right? Who's now a director of social commerce, right? But that was a long journey across like 40 plus brands, right?
Yeah.
When agencies or brands are thinking about their first TikTok Shop hire, like the foundational hire for their category, like what kind of interview process should they be looking like? How do they vet these candidates? Like any lessons you learned, right or wrong, from putting people in these positions and it working versus not working out?
Yeah, great question. I'm a huge proponent, I always have been, of hiring really smart people and people that have a similar work ethic, and they'll make it fit. Just like I said, and just like we both said, did we have an interest in affiliate marketing or no? And Caroline had a couple different roles at Advertise Purple prior to even us having a conversation about social commerce, but she was a really hard worker. She really cared. She adapted quickly. She was going to coding school at the time, which I thought was really cool that, we offered to invest in because we thought it would add value to her and add value to the company. She was just the go-getter, and we said, this role is opening up. Do you have an interest in it? And we thought we could add value to her. She could add value to us. And then obviously she brought on, team members from there. But, I believe more in hiring someone that's the right fit culturally, that has the same, than I do trying to trick them or ask them, how much experience do you have? And they can learn everything. They can read books. You can give them direction. You can say, hey, you're having an issue with a client on TikTok Shop. I remember this very similar issue a couple years ago, and Roland, talk to him. Here's how he dealt with it. Everything, business repeats itself, and the issues, there's only so many issues that clients can have. There's only so many issues at an agency that you can have. Everything that you are going through has been done before. Let's just figure out how to spin it and how to talk through what the solutions are.
Yeah, so essentially hiring for those, soft skills, great determination. I'm going to add in like bias towards action, right?
100%.
Being proactive. And then everything from pattern recognition and association can sort of be, covered by higher ups and leaders within the company who can help, groom these candidates in the right direction, right? I am curious if that's like, it seems so obvious when you say it. Like, why are people just looking at recycling all these agency account managers with 4 to 5 months of experience in each role to like skip this? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's something very early on at Advertise Purple, talking back to 2017, is we only hired people. We didn't want to hire anyone that had marketing experience. We didn't want them to come in with a false sense of what to do, or hey, I did this at my last agency, so I'm gonna do this now. We wanted to say, hey, follow the data, follow the client. We'll give you a playbook, color between the lines for now, and then let's all, once you get your footing, let's have a conversation on how we can adapt from here. Basically what you're saying resonates really well, because I don't believe in recycling account managers or going to our competitors and saying, hey, that person's been there for a couple of years. I think I'd rather hire someone that I can make understand what we do and is really smart and can come and say, have you thought about this, or have you thought about doing things this way, or hey, I found this new affiliate just through watching a YouTube video. Have you ever thought about working with them? Those are the types of things that are gold, and that's how we only promoted from within for from 2017 to really now.
Yeah.
We've hired out of having hundreds of employees, we have hired middle or upper managers maybe 2 or 3 times. Wow. Okay. So we believed in, hey, if you work hard and bust your butt, we're going to reward that in promotions, in raises, in a seat at the table, in coming up with new ideas, in creating SOPs, and we were really big proponents of that and adapting over time. And I think as a small growing company in a changing landscape, you have to be.
Interesting. Yeah, I feel like a lot of agencies, sort of impose these ceilings for no reason.
Yeah.
I am interested to dive into the culture there. I guess like one quick follow-up question going back to the last point, you guys said that you didn't want someone coming in with like sort of false notions on how to run this or previous marketing experience. So I'm interpreting that as they'd be more moldable, adaptable, coachable, to your guys' playbook and how you do things, right? What is like the opportunity cost or the implication of like bringing in someone who does have these false notions, and like how does that play out, or like how does that set back the momentum in your experience? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think we were not first movers, but we really challenged the affiliate landscape early on. We challenged the way our competitors did something or did things. It was kind of an antiquated industry that it was, everyone did kind of the same thing. They followed a playbook. They managed X number of accounts. We were the first ones to really rely on data and really build the technology that automated a lot of what we did. So the opportunity cost of hiring someone, we just thought that was not the way we wanted to do things. I feel like it's like Facebook hiring someone from MySpace, like that is how we looked at it for, right or wrong. We wanted to challenge the way that the industry had conformed to and challenge the way that things were done, because we didn't think that they were right. And, we really, I think a lot of people have caught up and a lot of people have technology now, but, we really back in the day were, I think, one of the first people to say, hey, let's throw some things at the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah. So critical thinking and first party data on like, why is this being done? Is this right for this situation right now? Maybe it was right 3 months ago, but like what data do you have to prove that still works right now? Because the marketplace, especially TikTok Shop, is incredibly volatile. Like the algorithm is changing, every 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, every 2 hours.
2 hours. Yeah. Even 2 hours. Right. And so it's just like, someone coming in with this premonition of like, I know the algorithm, this hack worked on the algorithm 3 months ago. It almost doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, you think I even saw like GMV Max, which is changing. And now all of these brands that were successful, I know it's becoming more competitive, but along with that, like the whole system of GMV Max changed, and, not getting too in the weeds of TikTok Shop, but, that's one thing that, what would the value in bringing in someone that worked at another agency that focused on GMV Max? All of a sudden that hire becomes, not valuable.
Yeah, exactly. All I need to do is like, is this spending enough? Is the ROI good? Like, do I need a hire to specifically specialize in that? If that's going to change in a couple of weeks or a couple of hours, right? Probably not.
Yeah.
I am curious, like, going back to that framework of choosing a job, right? The team, the scope, and the comp, right? I think what I'm seeing right now in the industry is like these account managers and directors are just, choosing someone who's going to pay them a bit more, right? So when it comes to like attracting talent to Advertise Purple, who fit this image of exactly who you want to be, right? How are you looking at compensating and incentivize people? You don't have to give me exact numbers on your guys' range, but I'm just curious in like structure, growth, like how are you convincing them that this is the place to grow and where you're going to earn the most,
Yeah, I think that comes down to, are we going to pay as much as our highest competitor is paying? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Do we, I'm on every interview, again, like to my point of hearing it from the horse's mouth. I guarantee that if we bring you on and you are adding the value, you will make more than whatever job you're also applying for at the same time. So I try to give that confidence. Like the upward mobility is so massive, and I reward personally hard work so quickly that are we willing to take a risk with hiring someone with a $250,000 salary from day one? No, that's not the way we operate. And I don't think that that's, in turn to like my point before, that's not the talent we're looking for. We're not looking for someone that's been in social media for 8 years we want someone that is motivated, that we can, our incentives will align with theirs. If you are, have low churn for your clients, or you're figuring out ways that I'm very quantitative. So I always say, hey, if you can back into and say, hey, I was able to do this, which made our clients more money, which in turn makes us more money, that is impossible for me to say no to pretty much whatever your request is.
Yeah, it's like, let me get a %.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I've never been adverse to that. Like if someone can show me any way that, hey, I was the sole reason for this, great. Let's find a way to compensate you for that, and let's find a way to compensate you moving forward. So you do that times 10.
But like playing devil's advocate, right? Like let's say I'm sitting across from you in an interview, and I'm like, Advertise Purple has like 100 people. How can you tell me and guarantee me upward mobility in a company this big where I can actually hit my, earnings potential versus like going to a startup, let's say, or a brand new TikTok shop where the upside is bigger, right? Like what would you say to someone who's kind of like throwing things like this out? Like how would you kind of sell them on that,
Yeah, I mean, I think what I've heard a lot in interviews is I don't think the CEO at a lot of interviews is the one interviewing every, which again, like you're not hearing it from a hiring manager, the head of HR, that you're hearing it directly from me. I will have conversations with all 100 people at the company, and if they I'll ask them to, hey, build a presentation, show me what you've done. Of course, I don't know the work that everyone does on a daily basis, but
Sure.
We get those types of questions all the time on interviews, and there needs to be a mutual leap of faith on both sides. You need to believe in the company, believe in our interview, believe in what I'm telling you. Otherwise, it's not the right fit anyway. And you should be more risk averse and take a job where you are probably going to get a 3% raise in 5 years.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I guess like, fast forwarding, like this brand got their Caroline, they scaled to like, 5, 10 plus brands, whatever helps hit their, agency's target margin, right? What does that second hire look like, right? Because the culture, the dynamics organizationally just change so much when there's a second person in. Like what level do you bring them in at? What does this person look like? Is it the same skill set, complementary? Like what has worked well for you?
Yeah, I think it depends. Like when we're thinking just social commerce, we again bifurcated that Caroline is a lot more on the client side and
Sure.
a lot more, and then we have people behind the scenes on the creator side, on building Discords, on building. So I relate it to back in 2017, 2018, Advertise Purple, we only had account managers that were wearing a lot of hats, doing everything. I was there, Kyle was there, and then I think the 2 other employees were account managers. Then we hired a couple more account managers. We then said, what do our clients need? And we hired the first analyst, and that analyst was writing handwritten KPIs. They were digging into the data. They were doing those VLOOKUPs and looking at brands and saying, running gap analyses. Sorry, that's what I was looking for. And running those gap analyses and seeing, okay, what affiliates aren't in these brands. That was a value add for our clients. Before then, I don't think any of our competitors had analysts. I never would have thought at the time. I don't even know how it came about that we decided to hire an analyst. But at that time, if you had asked me prior to that, hey, what's your next hire going to be? I probably would have said, oh, account manager, I'm an account manager. Or, so I think we adapt to the needs of our clients. We adapt to the market, we adapt to changes. Right now we really only do the affiliate portion of TikTok Shop. The next hire might be someone that does more of a holistic ad strategy or I just don't know. I just don't know what's going to add the most value for our clients, what's going to add the most value for us. That could change on a daily or hourly basis.
So getting to that next stage, right, where you're bringing in that second account manager, you're getting feedback from your clients, right, in terms of what to build. That's how I'm understanding it, right? I want to get into a very specific example, because by the time someone's made their second or third hire, there's processes in place, right? There's more structure, there's systems. It's not just an investment into a channel. Now we have to think about our utilization rates. How does this stack up against our other channels? What's the opportunity cost of making the third hire here versus another hire for the turnkey service for Advertise Purple, right? What does that decision-making process look like from you when you're giving budget to your other VPs or your heads there,
Yeah, I think, we have the luxury at this point of being a company that's been in business for a long time, that I'm able to make some of those higher risks that we might not have been able to do back in the day. And it would have had to be a calculated ROI, and we would have had to look, okay, is this employee going to be an expense or profitable? Now we fail fast. I'm let's hire 3 people. If 2 of them don't work out, or we're in a position where, a new business unit like this, I care more about the growth than I do about immediate profitability. We will, if we're doing what's right for our clients, if we're still building out a sales team, the profitability will come.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And I guess you as a, head of the company making those decisions, right? What is that risk-taking process or bet-making process look like? I had a conversation with our CEO where we're having a discussion on how do I choose which products to build, right? The example is I can push out MVPs, I can get early stage feedback, and I can validate my idea and build because I know it's going to be successful. But if I invest in building some really deep tech where no one has the edge, if that hits, then I get 10x the output of this decision, and my expected value or implied odds are a lot higher, right? So with, let's say you're stacking up a TikTok Shop hire versus Advertise Purple hire. It's I have my CAC to LTV on my Advertise Purple hire, right? Or I guess a different method, money in, money out, right? How do you look at making those bet taking decisions? And
it's something, again, not easy. I at this point I think I would hire both. I'll hire both, and we'll figure it out. And if one's not working or one's not adding value, then we'll part ways. That is kind of more the mentality than it's more for me. There's not, given where the company is, there's not so much this or that. It's this, not that. It's we're able to now make the investments that without necessarily sacrificing other things, because we're just, again, a bigger company at this size, that and Kyle's given me the autonomy. We don't have outside investment. I don't have guys in suits coming in telling me what I have to do. It's really just me, that I'm able to. I think a long-winded way of answering. I think Kyle and I both have failed so many times that it's okay to fail, and it's okay to make the wrong decision. That there comes a comfort with that I can back any decision I make with data. I can back into, hey, I thought, this person was going to come on and it was going to look like this, and it was a failure and we lost $50,000 because of it. As long as the thought process was sound and I can back that up, me and Kyle are on the same page, and I think we've failed a lot, but we've made more right decisions than we have wrong, that we built that trust with each other, that I have the autonomy to do that. And I'm very, I have a finance background. I'm very quantitatively driven. Every decision I make, I'm crunching numbers and doing some sort of predictive modeling and doing that. Is it right? Not always, but, is there at least thought that goes into it? And am I pressure testing the people that are going to, I'm never going to say yes without some sort of line of questioning or without some sort of, okay, what's exactly this person going to be doing? Where's that going to add value? How's that going to add value? How's that going to drive GMV? How's that going to, how's that going to take time off your plate? And then what are you going to be doing with that time? Those are all the questions that people know at this point to not come to me with a request without putting those things together, that it's just become, at this point with upper management, a healthy relationship of they know what I expect, what I'm going to say yes to, and vice versa.
So an interesting angle that I'm curious about, and this is within your guys' culture's context, right, is like, let's say you're making this hiring decision for a junior hire because there's a lower risk, but that junior hire has to be mentored, right? So going back to that earlier thing of like, the frequency times expected outcome sort of equation, right? When you're making these quantitative decisions in terms of money, are you factoring in like a certain time cost of upper management's time spent here versus there? Because like, the difference there versus the turnkey and this one and upper management spent here, it becomes a very complex modeling equation that like even I, like at an early stage company, right? Like I'm not necessarily time tracking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like, how would I go about, let's say I'm in an agency here making on that hire. How would I go about optimizing for my head of growth's time spent mentoring new people versus bringing on someone and the differential there,
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, hiring I'm thinking like, because right now, again, like if the Advertise Purple side, the direct to consumer side, where we have a majority of our business is not just on autopilot, but we have people that have been there, 7 to 10 years at this point. So everyone, me and all of upper managers say, let's put our heads together, let's split this up and figure it out. We just make it work with mentoring, with people, departments that are struggling, with social commerce. Everyone has a hand in that. That now it becomes a lot easier that we just pick up slack for each other. And there's such a trust between us that if one person is having a more busy week and can't do something, another person steps in. I'm trying to relate it back to in the beginning. I mean, Kyle and I had that same type of mentality. It didn't matter, him and I would pick up the slack for each other. There was no, that wasn't, it was, hey, I need you to do this, or hey, I need you to work with this new hire for 6 hours today, figure out what to do and what to prioritize and what not to do. And, did I sometimes outsource that 6 hours? Did I say, hey, I'll work with you for 5.5 hours, but for this 30 minutes, I want you to work with this other person, or I want you to watch this video, or I want you to, I think it's like utilizing resources, whether that's internal, whether that's external. It's not trying to do everything on your own, but doing enough that you're not just not caring or kicking people aside, because I think there's that fine balance there.
It does get tricky though, because as you scale to 100+ people, you can't pick up the slack for everyone, right? So especially with retention, right? I think running the risk with earlier hires is, they're thrown into TikTok shop. It's a brand new industry that hasn't been figured out yet. They're gonna want that exec time. They're gonna want those answers and support, right? How do you facilitate a culture of, keeping these people retained, motivated, even if they might not get that all the time?
Yeah, it's. I think right now I'm focusing a lot more on TikTok Shop because I'm excited about it, because we don't need as much on the traditional side. But that's changed. 6 months ago it was on the Amazon side, and I went out and met the founder of Levanta because I said like those were the types of things. So I think it's shifting. What's going to be the most beneficial for the company at this time. Right now, in my mind, it's TikTok Shop. So I think, of course, is there a level of care on the exec side needed on the D2C side and on the Amazon side right now? Yeah, but I'm putting that on the back burner and letting the people that I trust in their roles come to me and tell me, hey, I really need your support on this, rather than doing it proactively like I am a lot on the TikTok Shop side now.
So given that you're spending more time on the TikTok Shop side, what are some things that, your team has come to? Like, what do the typical requests look like that need your support? And, if you could give me a hypothetical example, right? How would you go about handling and supporting that teammate?
Yeah, I think a lot comes right now with with the TikTok Shop onboarding, with some of the regulatory stuff, with support from TikTok. That has been, because sales brings on these brands that are so excited and think that, they're going to drive all this GMV, and then they get rejected from TikTok Shop. And those are some of the issues that I've been really talking to Caroline and the team. Control what you can control. Focus on the clients that you can focus on. If a client leaves, like we talked about, earlier, if a client leaves the next day and you did everything you could, control the inputs. Whatever happens from there is going to happen. And again, I think it's been hard especially on the TikTok Shop side, because of all these external factors, because of TikTok Shop, because of changes to GMV Max, because of changes to all of these things that we've had to roll with the punches. And so I think my support has been more on the side of, hey, I'll talk to tough clients. I'll explain to them what we're doing. Hey, let's build this report together. Let me show you what we're doing on the traditional side. And hey, use this template, and hey, I'll reach out to these creators for you if I have to. It doesn't matter what it is. I will do the job of an intern. And I think that builds a level of trust that people feel like they can come to me. But also, I really mean it when I say, like, I will, genuinely reach out to creators if I have to. That is, do I actually do that? No. But do people know that I would if I needed to? And will I jump on the call with clients? Because that is what matters to, if people need the support, because that's what matters to our clients and to employees, 100%.
I think that culture is something that's like very rare. I think like even when I talk to you, I feel like you jump in with Reacher stuff. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, like this guy feels like he really would. Obviously, I know you're the CEO of another company, right?
Yeah.
I think like one thing that especially early stage startups and companies get pigeonholed into is like, we have to fight for survival. And then culture, retention, it all seems to come second.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? How would you, like for these budding agencies and budding companies who are fighting to keep 50% of their book of business from churning, how do they make time to prioritize culture and that feeling of camaraderie for their team?
Yeah, you have to make time for it, especially as a growing young company that is, your clients are going to churn. Either, the retention is going to come from the level of care from your employees. That is especially, like, it's tough because post-COVID is such a different world than pre-COVID, but culture was so important to us and still is. But, when we were a 4-person company and then 10-person company, we took, as grueling as we were and as high expectations as we had, every Friday we used to go down to Santa Monica Beach and say, hey, let's drink beers and play beach volleyball because you guys have busted your butts this week. And we know, I always say it's a work hard, play hard environment. We are going to reward, we have really high expectations, but we're going to reward that hard work with, hey, turn your laptop off, let's go to a happy hour, you deserve it. And I think investing both time, investing actually, like we talked about the opportunity cost before, you need to actually be involved in that. You can't just send teams off and say, hey, do your own thing. They're going to look at that as they're not going to want to be there. They're going to say, oh, they're, sending us to lunch. Like, you have to, as a CEO or as a director or as any management role, you need to be there in the weeds and having those conversations, having those personal conversations. You need to have people that want to work hard for you. That is only going to come from camaraderie and from, adding value or, allocating resources to culture.
And so, like, when you're at these happy hours or playing beach volleyball, like, what does that connection look like with this person? How deep are you really going there? I guess, like, what are some types of questions and things you guys talk about?
Yeah, that depends on the person. I would never want to make someone uncomfortable, and for some people that might be telling me what kind of music they like, and for other people that might be telling me about their childhood best friend who is saying, it all depends, but it's about that connection, it's about that connectivity. And it's about opening the door so they feel like they can talk to you on a wide range of things, whether that's, their love of Taylor Swift or, again, their mom that they got in a fight with that they really want to talk about. Like, that is where that they feel like, oh, wow, I opened up to this person. It's not just a job anymore. It's not just work anymore. I guess it's not just work anymore. Now it's a job. I guess that's probably not the right word, but it feels that's where the culture comes in. That's where it feels like, I always say, especially when we were a smaller group, it was like a bunch of friends working together. It was like a family working together. That becomes harder and harder as you grow. But we were friends first. And then we all really cared about work together. And the reason why we were able to laugh and joke and do some of the happy hours was because everyone worked so hard during the week. And we knew that. And there's a mutual level of respect there.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it brings me to an example I was talking to a friend about. She has her own TikTok beauty agency, right? And she was giving me a lecture on branding because I was being so tech bro about it. It's like, how do I optimize my branding for a proper MER, And she was just like, shut up, But she was like telling me about branding, right? And she was just like, the brand doesn't come from specifically one person or one leader. So if you're going out and talking to people like, you in this podcast, right? Or we're having dinner and like, there's a relationship there between our companies, right? Like, is that the Reacher culture? Am I a leader who's building something beyond myself and my connections and my ability to form this with people? I think the way I look at it is like, there's really, really talented people at the top of the company. Naturally, you have to be. But then as it grows, the influence dwindles, right? So if you're back at Advertise Purple facilitating a happy hour, but you can't actually be there and talk to everyone at every happy hour going, how do you make that culture,
the trickle down effect?
Yeah,
it really is like people manage the way that their manager manages. And I think that, that was something like I learned from Kyle back in the day of, hey, no question is a dumb question. Hey, come. Hey, I'm going to wake, every Slack I send in the morning is going to start with, hey, good morning. Like those are the little, or, people on their way out, it doesn't matter if they're going to a competitor or going, people need to do what's right for them. It's like building that, they see their leader doing that and then they emulate that in their own. It just inherently they learn to do that, whether they notice it or not. The other thing I'd say is like, I brought up the coding school before, but we do a lot. It's not only happy hours. I know I gave a bad example of drinking beers on the beach, but I used to bring in one of my professors, Chris Bresnahan, who's the man at USC. He used to come in and speak to the group, and people let their barriers down and said, hey, I'm really struggling at, he was a business management professor, but, really talked about burnout and talked about, things that are really relevant for a small, for a growing company, that doing things like that and letting people, your emotional intelligence come out and hearing people different. This person that you thought was an asshole at the office, that all of a sudden they're saying, hey, I'm really struggling because I am, whatever it is. Like those are the types of things. You have those conversations. All of a sudden, the next time you talk to that person, it's going to be like, hey, maybe it's not just this work relationship, this persona that they had. I get there's more behind, whoever it is than just that, what seems like an angry coworker. And those are the types of things that are going to come out again through some professional development stuff, through a happy hour, through those. When I say culture, it's a lot more than just supportive. There's so many encompassing things, from a supportive manager to social events to professional development to feeling supported and feeling like you're coming into a place where you can ask questions and you're making a difference. Like there's 1,000 different factors as it relates to culture.
It sounds like there's a lot of levers you can pull. It sounds like vulnerability is like a big one to humanize and empathize with the people around you. I think this might be a little bit of like a, I guess, darker philosophy take, but I think you could cultivate this like very bright, very talented person in your organization. But my philosophy is stress brings out the true nature in people, right? And so it's interesting that I know it might not seem like a big deal to a lot of people to say good morning, but if you're the CEO of a company and shit's hitting the fan every single minute of the day, sometimes, right? How do you train other people to say that good morning and pass on that empathy, right? Because it's not coming from you. They're in stressful environments. There's new leaders stepping into these roles, right? How do you propagate the culture through those stressful situations?
What's stress? I've never again, I think it is learning by seeing, learning by seeing, learning by doing. Like people are only going to, the poor way of wording this, but they're not going to get it on day one. They're not going to get it on day two. They're going to get it because they had a really stressful moment, and I might have been coming down on them, or I might have been yelling at them for something that they did. But I started with, hey, good morning. I know you've been working really hard lately, and I know that, you had a huge win with that client last week, and, great job on that. But, we got to connect on this. This really can't happen again. I know it's like you got to start with something. The natural reaction is to just dive in. And, so one, I think that taking a second to breathe and to say something like good morning, one, allows you to relax and think about, formulate your words, and two, allows them to relax when they're reading the message. I think also, like, one thing that I always do is I never will say, hey, meet with me at 2:00 to an employee that, it's intimidating to have that. It'll be, hey, let's meet at 2:00. I want to talk about this client, don't stress, but giving context. Like, I don't want to create that environment where I'm adding to stress, or there's this, like, ambiguous me, like that, just that type of culture. And I've had a lot of tough conversations. I've been, probably mean to people that, that messed up. I have an enthusiastic personality for good and bad, but that no one will ever say I was disrespectful. No one will ever say that I built a culture or that I, was unfair to them. It is, I try to, again, even if people mess up, even if I know it's going to be a really hard conversation, or even if I'm going to have to fire someone, I give them, they know that, okay, I was given a chance. I was told how to do something. I was given every opportunity and supported in order to succeed. I just did not.
Interesting. For those leaders who, may kind of like slip up and, may go straight to the action, right, without taking a second to breathe or saying good morning, how would you give them advice on being able to get in the correct headspace, right? I know we were talking earlier about health, working out, sleep. There's a lot of intangibles that go beyond just business acumen that lead to these chain of events, which leads to things like firing an employee and getting a lawsuit, right?
Yeah.
What would be your advice to people on the things they can do that are related to but slightly outside of work to get in this headspace of doing that?
Yeah, so I think just like people look at me as the CEO and I looked at Kyle or looked at some mentors, I think it's learning, it's reading books, but it's also getting a mentor that tends to your weaknesses or like if people know if they are insensitive or come off as insensitive, or they should have the intelligence, especially as an upper manager, to be able to sense that. Read, Leaders Eat Last. Read or take a class. Like, there's so many resources that you need to adapt to your weaknesses, and regardless, you can be the hardest worker in the world. If you don't have empathy for coworkers or for subordinates, you're not a good manager. And, getting the right people on the bus and leveling those people up, that is more important than however hard one person could work.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a good note to end this on. Thanks so much for hopping on. It's been a pleasure, and I learned a lot.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks so much for bringing me on. Hopefully this is not the last one, I'm sure.
First of many.
Yeah, I love it. Awesome. Yep. Thanks so much, Son.
Of course.